I call this meeting to order, the East Brunswick Township Council Agenda Action Meeting for January 28, 2019. Please, everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to have a moment of silence for the 56 police officers that were shot in the line of duty in 2018, as well as the 9 that died in the line of duty in 2019. And please remember in our prayers the 5 police officers that were shot today in Houston tonight. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everyone, please have a seat. Ms. Perry? Call roll.
Councilman McAvoy.
Here.
Councilman Spadafino.
Here.
Councilwoman Sullivan.
Present.
Councilman Wendell.
Here.
And Council President Stanley.
Here.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided as required under Chapter 231, PL 1975, specifying the time, date, location, and to the extent known, the agenda, by posting on a copy on the Municipal Building Public Notice Bulletin Board located in the main lobby, providing a copy to the Home News Tribune and Sentinel newspapers, posting a copy on the Township's website, and by filing a copy in the office of the Township Clerk in accordance with the certification which will be entered in the minutes.
Going on to tonight's State of the Township address by our Mayor, Dr. Cohen.
Good evening, councilmen, administration, township employees, professional advisors, and most importantly, the residents of the Township of East Brunswick. Let me all start by wishing you all a Happy New Year. As I begin the second half of my first year as your mayor, I'm humbled by the support that I've been given. I am also excited about 2019, and I expect that this will be a year that we begin to see some demonstrative evidence of positive change regarding redevelopment. This is the result of a lot of groundwork, which is not always so exciting, but important nonetheless. But more about that later. 2018 was a year of significant changes and accomplishments. A review of the most significant milestones that will help set up the expectations and challenges for 2019. 2 major changes occurred at the end of 2018. The first change came as a result of the 2018 midterm elections. And despite a national mood for change, East Brunswick voters overwhelmingly supported the democratic vision for our community that began with the 2016 election victory for myself, Councilman Sterling Stanley, and Michael Spadafino. With the re-election of Councilman Jim Wendell and the election of Councilman Kevin McAvoy and Councilwoman Sharon Sullivan, the Democratic Party has complete control of the township government, something that we have not seen in decades. This places an even greater responsibility to administer the affairs of our township with transparency and openness, and we will insist on nothing less. The second major change came at the end of the year, and that was a record number of retirements. These include Lou Neely, our CFO of 44 years, Greg Pekulski, the Director of Planning and Engineering, Deborah Rainwater and Stephen Gottlieb of the Planning and Engineering Department, Ed Grabelny from Construction, Linda Rubenstein from Housing, Sharon Morrissey and Marion Vandeveer from the Department of Aging, and Charles Garman from DPW. And I'm sure that I have left some people out, so please forgive me. The long tenure of these employees speaks to their commitment to the township and their work. But with such a dramatic change comes opportunity to shape a new administration. We have found exciting and well-trained professionals to pick up where our retirees have left off. The quality of our new professionals speaks to the legacy of those who have left and the reputation of the workforce right here in the township. I ask that you and our residents welcome all of our new staff. As for accomplishments, let me take you through a quick review of our administrative and department achievements. First, after several years of conversations and meetings with the New Jersey Department of Transportation, They finally agreed to repave large segments of Route 18, concentrating on the overpasses, turnarounds, intersections, and much of the highway. This is not, however, a substitute for the massive repaving project that is needed, but will serve drivers and residents until the final road project begins sometime in 2020. The Middlesex County Board of Chosen Freeholders kept to their word and to their road commitment and began repaving many of the township's county roadways, and the project will continue over the next several years. Our Department of Planning and Engineering continued our commitment to roads by repaving 4.75 miles of roads, as my administration committed $1.8 million to this work, almost double the amount spent yearly since the recession. Other road projects included the Mason Avenue water main, the Dunham's Corner road improvements that many of you have seen, and bike paths on Hardenberg and Dunham's Corner Road, all that is part of a 4-year project to provide bike paths, lanes, and walks throughout the township. Highlights from our Parks and Rec department include the fact that they brought in about $2.7 million in revenue last year, the second largest on record. The Heavenly Farms fields turf were replaced, long overdue. There were basketball court refurbishments in most of our parks, and we put in a lighted pickleball courts in Community Park. Our youth council logged in about 9,600 hours of community service. There were many, many programs throughout the Parks and Recs department. They had a record number of turnout and a record number of vendors for East Brunswick Day, and our 4th of July celebration was the largest on record. Despite the rainy summer, Crystal Springs Water Park was able to realize $1.3 million in revenue. And as you know, as a self-liquidizing utility, the council and residents should be reminded that all profits must stay within the utility to purchase new equipment, pay staff, to make improvements, and to service the debt. The Department of Public Works and the Water and Sewer Utility are responsible for building maintenance, road maintenance, vehicle maintenance. They are responsible for recycling, solid waste, water infrastructure maintenance, sewer maintenance, and as most of you know, there's aging infrastructure in all of these areas, and they continue to pose a challenge. The 2017-18 winter season saw a record number of water main breaks, which were repaired in-house despite frigid and wet weather conditions. The department continued and benefited from our brine production system. This resulted in significantly less salt use, something that we all know is corrosive and harmful to the environment. And we also profit by selling our excess brine to surrounding towns. Despite a slight increase in water costs from our supplier, our rates in East Brunswick remain significantly lower than all other towns in central New Jersey. Our Department of Aging had 260 new registrants last year and maintains an active daily attendance of 150 members. These numbers continue to rise, and that's due to new and innovative programming. Our senior center saw renovations to the bathrooms funded through an $85,000 community block grant, and the library furniture was replaced and the computer room was upgraded as a result of generous donations from area businesses and our own East Brunswick Chamber of Commerce. Our public library had another banner year of 300,000 plus visitors. The checkout system was improved by the installation of a radio frequency identification system, which allows for self-checkout. The library hosted about 500 programs, many of them in partnership with other township organizations, such as the Human Relations Council, Arts Commission, the Environmental Commission, Parks and Rec, and our own Board of Ed. The library continues to draw praise for their health and wellness initiative called Just for the Health of It, and the year ended with a 2-year, $100,000 grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in order to mobilize the program throughout Middlesex County. EBTV produced 242 original programs and 194 segments of This Week in East Brunswick. The station took over all of my Facebook Live presentations, and they were at every major East Brunswick event. The year ended with the station management moving over to the township administration, a transition that was smooth and respectful of our professional staff. There will be no changes in the quality of the programming, and the change is expected to result in a greater role for EBTV in the marketing of East Brunswick. Our Department of Public Safety continues to provide the township with a level of protection that makes us one of the safest towns in New Jersey. This is done through proactive management and through community policing. All statistics show exemplary performance of our 83 sworn officers. The department investigated approximately 2,400 motor vehicle accidents last year, and of note is the fact that there was a 4.8 or almost 5% reduction in injuries, and there were no, capital N, capital O, no fatal motor vehicle crashes for the entire 2018 year. The department implemented the Cry Wolf program, which is a program to reduce false home alarms, and community policing continued to increase the number of programs and saw a significant increase in requests for security programs and training at our houses of worship in the wake of the attack on the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. As it relates to township finances, 2018 saw a $7.5 million increase in ratables, with a significant increase coming from commercial sources. This was the first time there was a reduction in ratable percent to residential homes, bucking what had become a trend of increased reliance on residential property taxes for our ratable base. Part of the ratable increase, however, was negated due to a $2.5 million loss in revenue due to commercial tax appeals. East Brunswick does continue to remain a desirable community, as evidenced by stable tax rates, a competitive real estate market, and good schools. Assessors processed 1,100 new deeds in 2018. As for property taxes, last year we were able to hold municipal property taxes flat. That was due to smart fiscal management, flat healthcare costs, increased revenues, and minor increases in our pension costs. Several factors will make that very difficult for 2019. These include 3 factors. First, contracts with our collective bargaining units, some of which have yet to settle. 2, massive increases in our pension costs, mostly to the police department. And 3, increased costs of solid waste and recycling. Let me go over each one of those 3. As of this writing, 3 of 5 of our bargaining units have settled for a 4-year contract that calls for 2% increase the first year, which was 2018, and 2.5% increases for the remaining 3 years, along with holding health care costs at the top level per Chapter 78. This means that all settlements will continue to require employees to pay a percentage of their health care costs. The remaining 2 bargaining units represent the 2 public safety unions, which is the Superior Officers Union and the Police Benevolent Association. Township is offered the same contract as the other bargaining units which have settled, and we are required to pay an additional $3,600 per officer for their pension. This makes the full cost to the township a staggering $35,000 per officer compared to all other township employees, where the pension contribution averages $8,000 per employee. We are still in talks with the PBA and SOA. I expect that those should end in a good outcome. The cost of all contracts, assuming that unions settle for terms equal to that of the other 3 municipal unions, would still bring additional costs to the township, as we had only budgeted 2% per year for all unions and all 4-year contracts. As mentioned earlier, the second cost is the increase that we are hit in regards to massive increases in our pension costs this year. These increases, the increase alone, comes out to $500,000, 60% of which goes to the 83 police officers and 40% to the 260 municipal employees. The third cost is due to our solid waste and recycling. Our contract for solid waste and recycling was renegotiated for the 2019 new contract. And due to consolidation within the industry and increased operating costs, we only had one respondent to our RFP. Due to this limited bargaining position and the added costs due to the loss of profit in the recycling market, we had to incur a substantial increase in our costs. Our carrier and our schedule of services will remain the same for this contract, and our costs will incrementally increase over the life of our 5-year contract. On a good note, healthcare costs remained flat for a second year in a row. Our employees continue to take advantage of wellness programs. weight loss programs, generic drugs, and mail-away drug programs. So in short, by promoting healthy lifestyles and preventive care, we have been able to enjoy healthcare cost savings. In regards to 2019, we have a very exciting year ahead. And to give you some idea, let me give you the highlights. 1, as mentioned earlier, redevelopment will be in high gear. Expect demolition of the former Wonder Bread factory this winter. Many of you may have noticed fences already gone up around the property. Site plans will be before the planning board by the spring, and construction of the first phases of that project should begin in the summer, more likely the fall of this year. RFPs were received for large segments of the Loman site and the Wiz site. Expect our redevelopment agency to name redevelopers for these projects soon and work to begin this year. Plans include a mixed-use walkable downtown that is a large component of the project, and the area should also be home to a community center, hotel, and restaurants. The township is also in contract to purchase the former David's Bridals and Corner properties on Ruth Street and Route 18. We will look to proceed with plans for construction of the township's third parking deck and bus station, and we will look to see if additional properties are needed for this project. The township will also see the addition of a 500,000 square foot fulfillment center on Edgeboro Road near the landfill. In addition, the developer has paid for redevelopment designations for most of the Edgeboro properties in order to assist owners in cleaning up and redeveloping many of the buildings that have fallen into disrepair. Let me publicly thank Councilman Jim Wendell and the Redevelopment Agency for their hard work. This is a very detail-driven process, and much of the work is laborious and unexciting. However, we've come a very long way and should be able to reveal exciting plans in the days and weeks ahead. A shout out to the Redevelopment Advisory Committee, as they will also begin the process of reviewing these plans and will provide the forum for public participation in what can only be described as a generational change in the look of our most valuable commercial corridor. Department of Planning and Engineering will continue on much of the work they began since I took office in 2017. We've committed about $2 million to township roads, and the repaving repairs will begin as soon as the weather allows. We are going to use state transportation funds to repave parts of Riva Avenue, Old Stage Road, and Ruse Lane. Applications for DOT grants for Riva and Old Stage Road are pending. We will also continue the bike path and bike lane program. Federal funding has also been approved for the bike path that will connect Crystal Springs to the Community Arts Center. And we will have, and are still looking for, DOT grant that's pending for local freight infrastructure funds to repair Edgeboro Road. If that were to be approved, the township would receive $1.65 million to be used towards this much-needed project. Our Department of Public Safety expects to receive accreditation from the New Jersey Association of Chiefs of Police. This would be a big achievement and will be celebrated as soon as we hear that it's been received. As mentioned earlier, we are negotiating in good faith with both bargaining units, and I expect that we shall have a settlement of our issues very soon. Parks and Recreation are gearing up for another banner year. With the establishment of the East Brunswick Arts Coalition, we are working on providing our own version of Plays in the Park this summer. We will be piloting the program with 2 3-day performances over the summer at the Community Arts Center. We will be seeking stronger partnerships with the East Brunswick Board of Education. There are a number of areas where we can work together to help enhance services for our residents and control costs. And finally, we will need to invest in our information technology department as we continue to have needs in human capital, software, and hardware. We intend to move forward and towards replacement of the township website, something and an upgrade that is long overdue. A hearty thank you to the IT department for implementing Burbio, the application-based interactive community calendar. I encourage all residents to download the free application to their handheld mobile device. I'm currently working with all the departments, our business administrator, Joseph Crisculo, and our new CFO, Angel Albanese, on the 2019 budget. It is unlikely that we will be able to repeat the flat budget that we were able to achieve last year, but we are working to keep any increase to a minimum. There is still work to be done, and some of the numbers can change as we get closer to adopting a budget. Areas that could impact the final budget include the final contracts with the PBA and SOA, state aid, which is expected the first quarter of the year, settlement of large outstanding commercial tax appeals, and finally the winter. As we all know, that's unpredictable, so snow removal, winter damage, water main and sewer line breaks can all exceed what we had budgeted. But overall, the state of the township is very strong. This is due in part to tight fiscal management and a low debt ratio. East Brunswick remains one of the premier towns in New Jersey, and demand to live in our community remains high. Our plans for redevelopment have been noted and followed by industry leaders and organizations throughout the state. These include New Jersey Futures, Globe Street, and the Urban Land Institute. Despite the changes ahead, what remains stable is the quality and the commitment of our residents. You are the reason that I work so hard, and you are the reason that every one of the council members sit at this dais. We are a team where everyone is called upon to contribute. Every person matters, and no one person is any more important than anyone else. No one has cornered the market on good ideas. So thank you. God bless the residents of this great town. God bless the members of the armed services that keep us safe, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cohen, for the State of Township address. Moving on to the agenda session. Tonight, we have an amendment for Chapter 158, the Parks and Public Lands, change for enforcement of the smoking on schools property. I would like to invite Detective Brian Adams to come to the podium and address this.
Thank you. I'm sure some of you are aware of what I'm trying to accomplish here. I think everyone has copies of the proposed amendment change. This amendment change is a proactive approach to try to deter and combat the issue we're having within the school district and around the community with use of juveniles using vaporizers. So there are multiple cases where students use vaporizers during school, especially at the high school, and even filters down into our middle school at Hammarskjold. One of the biggest reasons for going through with this amendment, this change to our ordinance, is so we could issue ordinances to the juveniles and make them more accountable for their actions. They know it's not appropriate. They know it is not legal for them to smoke inside of a school, especially to use vapes. And we do not want to charge them formally on a juvenile complaint. We want to minimize the prison, the school to prison pipeline, so to speak, where they're not exactly having a juvenile jacket, but they're still responsible for their actions. Also in this amendment, I added indoor public places and places around the township that you are prohibited from smoking, including areas where there's children present, inside our restaurants, and all these things that are in our state law, we don't have an ordinance for. So this will give us an option to enforce it just by using our own township ordinance, rather than going through the criminal process, so to speak. So if anybody has any questions, for me, I'd be willing to answer them for you.
Good. Council Spadafino.
Well, I just wanted to be able to sort this out and get this clear. We're talking about this targeting specifically juveniles and up to what age, what's the age limit, what's the cutoff here?
So it's not targeting, so to speak. It's holding juveniles, especially within our school district, accountable for their actions. They know that bringing vaporizers or smoking in and on school property is illegal. Right now, the only thing we do is we have an administrative action that's taken by the school board. Mm-hmm. We do not want to have to charge a juvenile with smoking on public property or in schools. We don't want to have them go through the juvenile system for that. So to hold them accountable for their actions, we keep it in the municipality by issuing them a township ordinance.
18-year-olds?
Until they're juveniles from 17 and below.
Okay.
But with this ordinance, it includes adults. If an adult has an action, it takes action, the adults too can be issued this. We never had an ordinance in our township that covered it. We always had to issue the criminal statute for it if it came to that. For smoking in restaurants or in public places, the only thing we had in our ordinances was for public parks. That's it.
Anyone else?
Thank you for coming out this evening, Detective Adams. Just piggybacking on what Councilman Spadafino said, let's use a high school football game as our example. I could be wrong, but it seems like whether it's juveniles or it's people as old as I, they take these vape machines, and it's almost as if they feel they're cool, and they want you to look at them as they are blowing this cloud of smoke that is so overwhelming that the average person says, what's going on in that car? So, having said that, if there are adults coming to an event at the high school, like a football game, now, so they're on school property, they're within that magical number of 50 feet, 50 yards, whatever, is it going to be your duty to speak with the adult as well?
Yes, if we have officers that are there at the game and they observe it or it's brought to their attention, we would be able to issue a township ordinance to that adult or that student for the action.
I like that. But I also don't want to see our police force overwhelmed with having to deal with whether it's a high school football game or it's our July 4th celebration or it's the parking lot at a particular event. Follow where I'm going with that, right?
Yes, it is.
And in reading the ordinance addition, it says the purpose and goals of the state law and regulation concerning tobacco, nicotine, electronic devices would be furthered by the local regulation. So the local regulation is what you're talking about. We're going to tweak that just for East Brunswick.
Yes, sir.
I applaud you for it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have a
I just have one quick question. I noticed that you have a $100 fine for first offense. Have you thought about community service for these people instead, for the children? So it doesn't become a burden on the parents?
Well, there's a couple ways that we can assign. Usually all of our township ordinances have a monetary value assigned to them. Usually if that could be a determining factor that the judge could make the recommendation for that, then the judge can do that. The only time that we actually offer anything as far as community service is when we do our station house adjustment programs, which are programs before we get another program before we get to the criminal aspect of what the person did.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one question, right? Going back to what you said earlier, you said presently right now it's a criminal conviction if...
So presently, under the New Jersey laws,
Okay.
we would have to send, for a juvenile, so to speak, for the juvenile, we
Right.
would have to send it through a juvenile complaint up to family court.
Okay, so if something happened in the school system and it was reported to the principals, they would call you in and you would issue a citation?
So I'm at the schools every day. I
Right.
serve as the school resource officer. So if one of the principals had contacted me and said, they were vaping, I could review the video footage. I would do my investigation if it showed that they were using a vaporizer, which some vaporizers actually contain THC, which is another issue we have. I could issue a township ordinance for that based on my investigation.
But without this, right now, you would go through the...
I would have to do a formal juvenile complaint and
Complaint.
send it up to
Send
the
up to
family court
family
for
court?
juvenile.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So this will be on the agenda February the 11th?
Yes.
For first reading? Longest Mike doesn't have any.
I've been talking to the school board attorney. If there are any issues, we'll figure them out.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have another question.
One more question? Okay.
I do understand and agree with this concept for juveniles and in restricting certain areas. But just like a lot of things when it comes to adults, I have a little bit of a problem. I mean, I know that there are possibilities for these vaping systems to be elaborated to utilize other substances other than nicotine, but there's a lot of facets to it that concern me both ways. When I encouraged my daughter to quit smoking, one of the ways that we enabled her to be able to quit smoking was to use a vape type situation of a nicotine delivery system that went through decreasing increments and over the course of 6 months was successful. And now 5 years later, she has never gone back to cigarette smoking or a vape delivery system. Also, I don't see where I've read much on any health risks from a nicotine delivery system that is in an open situation whereby I am putting a person who's within a certain range at any kind of health risk because I'm using a nicotine delivery system. And I'm a little bit concerned about restricting an adult's right to utilize a nicotine delivery system, even though I'm not personally for it. But, you know, I'm okay with the juvenile part, but I'm a little bit disturbed by any concept of an adult situation.
Councilman, and I'll ask Brian, the detective, to help me out. The state law already forbids that in public places. So go ahead. Sorry.
Apologize. So the verbiage that I use for this ordinance is based on the updates to the state law. So it's actually the state that made the requirements that said you cannot vape in these certain areas in these indoor public places. So it's basically following the same terms as regular cigarettes.
Correct. So Councilman, it's at what level of the court system do you enforce it? Does it have to be at a higher level where there might be a record, or can it be done in municipal court as an ordinance violation?
And if it gets to that point, we'd rather keep it in town than have a arrest record.
I understand.
Any other questions? You good? Thank you.
Thanks, Detective.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on, seeing none, there is nothing for public hearing today. We're going to move on to the reports section. Any reports from the mayor?
I think I spoke enough.
Thank you, sir. From town administrator?
No, sir.
Director of law?
Nothing tonight, Councilman.
From our clerk's office?
Nothing.
Any council, committee, or board? Seeing none, I'll move on to the public portion. The public portion, please come up to the podium, state your name. If you, please limit your comments to 5 minutes and address it to the chair. Anyone from the public wishing to speak tonight? Yes, sir.
Hi, Councilman. Joe Petroselli, 20 Navajo Road. I'm new to East Brunswick. I'm a 30-year veteran from Edison. I moved here about 6 months ago in July, and I'm trying to get familiarized with your budget and how your process works in the town. Tried to have meetings with the mayor. Unfortunately, one got canceled, and I haven't been able to do it, so I would like to understand the council's perspective, because I think the budget is the most important charge you guys face on an annual basis. To go and say police, and you'll all know that I represent a lot of PBAs up and down the state, and I do a lot of contract negotiation. But to come here and make statements that their pension is a problem when they're contributing 10% is not helping the budget. There's many pieces that go into a budget, and I've been involved with the Edison. I sat on the finance committee. I was frequently sitting with council, finance, and I think public members should be allowed to be part of this budgetary process. It should be open and transparent. It shouldn't be that we get an adopted budget and then it's shoved down your throats, and in a month or whatever amount of time it is, we put these budgets out. Budget, and I teach budget at the College of Staten Island. I teach cost accounting. Budget is a working process that you do on a daily basis, and certainly keeping the council involved and trying to look for different. Having only one bid on a garbage, maybe the RFP wasn't written, maybe there was something in it that didn't attract it, but having one is not going to give a competitive price. You have a huge surplus in this town, and to go and say you haven't raised taxes when you use an additional $800,000 is being disingenuous to the public. It's going to change. I will come to every meeting on my time and talk about the budget to help every one of my fellow residents. I've already been talking to a lot of residents in my neighborhood. A lot of them don't understand the budget. It's a complex document. I can sit here and go through the budget and show a lot of places I would look. Do you have a 5-year plan for your police vehicles so you don't have to buy 7 of them at one time? It's all about smoothing. Can you get a contract and adjust the step guides so that you smooth, because you have a 2% hard levy cap? Everybody talks about the police cap and the fire cap. You're bound by 2% that you can raise taxes. And that's the true cap. You can easily raise the spending cap by, and you did it, which is brilliant. You always go to the COA increase and take the 3.5, because if you have a cap bank, you utilize it provided you stay within the 2% cap. So I'm here to say that this budget has a lot of potential. You have a lot of good things in this. Lou is an excellent, he speaks at many of the things. He knows his stuff. You're talking about redevelopment, you're talking about bonding and your offering statements. So there's things that are to try to generate. But if you have 7.5, Mayor, in all due respect, if you have 7.5 of new ratables and you're getting a lot of tax appeals, the question is why? Now, I think we haven't had a reassessment, and I know people don't want it because it could shift it. But that makes it difficult to try to fight those tax appeals, because I've seen huge tax appeals in Edison. It killed us. But commercial ratables are valued differently than residential. So if they can play games with income, in all due respect, and they don't make enough income, but I don't know how you're not making income in a thriving economy. Like, I'd like to know, how does an apartment lose $10 million of value? I mean, that's a significant drop, one property, an apartment. So those are the kinds of things I can point you to and help. This is not about hurting anybody. This is about helping the budget and pointing to the real things that can be changed. Somebody should be asking, why is an apartment building $10 million of rateable value less than it was in 2010? That's significant. And I can tell you, the apartments use the school systems. Let's face it. Now, of our budget and taxes, Council President, how much of it is the municipal? Out of 100% of our taxes, how much of it is municipal? 21%. 60% school. That's going to be pretty much throughout any town you go in the state of New Jersey. I'm sorry?
I said you have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. I'm not used to that. I apologize. I don't mean to take up too much. I just want to let you know, every one of you council people have an open door to me. I will be more than happy to sit down with any of you, go over the budget. I will never talk about other issues in this town. All I care about is the budget and helping with the budget. If you look at my record in Edison, anytime I went to a council meeting, it was regarding the budget. And one of the things I heard tonight is there's a negotiation going on between the police unions. There's a complete disconnect of communication. And that's all I was trying to point out, is communication is what you always want open. You have open communication, you can get things done. So I hopefully tonight, the door opens, and I can help you in any way I possibly can to help my fellow residents in East Brunswick. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much for spending your time here. If you don't mind, at the end of the meeting, would you give your contact information to the clerk for us?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak tonight? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public portion. And moving on to the consent agenda, are there any items that wish to be removed? Or seeing none, I would like a motion for items A through I.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Spadafino. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Sullivan.
Call the roll.
Call the roll, please.
Councilman McAvoy.
Yes.
Councilman Spadafino.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilman Wendell. He hung up. Okay, he's no longer here. And Council President Stanley?
Yes. Moving on to the ordinances requiring a public hearing date, February 11, 2019. Can I get a motion for the following ordinance 19.02, amending Chapter 109, Vehicles and Traffic, Section 40, Schedule I, no parking of the Code of the Township of East Brunswick? Motion by Councilman Spadafino, second by Councilman Sullivan. Any discussion?
I took a ride over to the neighborhood in question yesterday. I purposely chose Sunday morning because I felt that it would be a good barometer of people who, maybe had not gotten up and made their way off to their house of worship yet. And what I noticed was there were a lot of vehicles parked on that main thoroughfare going into the, I'm going to call it the development. And I had a map of the areas in question that were going to be the no parking signs. And looking up Windsor and Buchanan, if I've got I don't have my notes here in front of me, there are a lot of cars. And so I can see how you're telling your son or your daughter to go, park down on that main thoroughfare. And I hadn't received the police report. Clerk Perry had just maybe forgotten to send it to me, so I didn't know that the police were involved in this process until today. And then it overcame me that, okay, if it's a police examination, they know what they're doing, and they're making the recommendation based on the flow of traffic and how it backs up, and people can't see at the top of the main street coming onto River Road. But the question after all of that is, have the residents been notified? Has there been a township knocking on, we're not going to be knocking on doors, Mayor, but have all the residents been informed that this is what's happening prior to making this decision?
I honestly can say I don't know, but the problem is sightlines. When it's going to be dangerous for somebody to pull out onto that roadway, we certainly have to be concerned with public safety, and that's what the memo from Wade Gordon through Captain Zook to the chief explains. I don't know if they had walked the development, but they certainly will be informed before it's implemented.
Yeah, we made that error about a year ago when we did some of the properties near Lake Avenue, and residents got upset because after having passed the ordinance, the signs were put up and they just weren't notified, which was just an oversight, and we were promised that that would not happen again. So residents, after you approve the ordinance, will be notified ahead of time to expect that these restrictions will be in place, and they're going to have to find alternative places to park because it's simply a danger.
And I firmly believe that the educated resident can open up the township website and see the agenda and find out that there's something affecting their neighborhood, because that's what I was doing prior to becoming an elected official, and at the same time still going onto the website to review the agenda. But I don't know that any of our fellow residents are in the audience this evening, so maybe there is no concern. I mean, I am in support of this, but I just was curious if the residents if there was a process by which they were enlightened about what's going to be happening. Okay, thank you, Council President.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the study came about due to homeowners' complaints.
That's correct.
Because of the site not being able to see.
That's correct.
Making the turns, right?
That's correct.
Right. And also, I believe you can, once this is done, the homeowners association can be informed of the changes, so they can notify, the homeowners association can notify each resident. And Because whatever, I know,
Yeah, there's a sizable amount of
Yeah.
people that live in that community. We're going to be doing, basically no parking from this location to the corner. So I believe in some instances, it's 25 feet, and then as you get over near where the hill is, the entire length all the way down to River Road will be no parking. So, it would be tough to target whom. In the example that the mayor was given, we were going to resident parking only in that particular area, where then the resident would have to come in, get their ID to, get a tag for their car so they can park in the street, because that was a resident parking only. This is going to be a situation where there's no parking whatsoever from basically 25 feet until the corner, as explained to me by Wade Gordon, the patrolman.
any other discussion? Okay, Ms. Perry, please call the roll.
Councilman McAvoy,
Yes.
Councilman Spadafino,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sullivan,
Yes.
Council President Stanley.
Yes. Can I get a motion for the following ordinance 19-03? Bond ordinance of the Township of East Brunswick and the County of Middlesex, New Jersey, providing for the financing by the township on behalf of the Township Redevelopment Agency of the acquisition by contract or eminent domain of certain property, appropriating $15 million thereof, and authorizing the issuance of $15 million bonds or notes of the township to finance the cost thereof. Can I get a motion?
So,
Motion by Councilman Spadafino, second by Councilman
Second.
Sullivan. Any discussion? Councilman McAvoy?
It was early in 2017, maybe February, March of 2017. I was in this same Hall of Justice, as I like to call it, for a planning board meeting. And the planning board meeting had to do with eminent domain. I don't recall the specifics of exactly what was going on. I know that it was fresh in Mayor Cohn's term, but he had recused himself from the meeting. I don't know what that was for. The only member of the council that was in the room was Councilwoman Clark, who was on the planning board. An attorney in town, William Winters, whose office is on the corner of Route 18 and Egger Street, right by the crosswalk, was at the lectern, at the podium, spending considerable time talking about eminent domain. And he finished off his talk by saying, and I'm paraphrasing, there are only two things that can happen to a citizen of our country that are abhorrent to comprehend, let alone live with. Number one, being incarcerated in a prison while falsely accused. And number two, having your private property taken from you via eminent domain. As goosebumps still radiate through my body as I'm speaking to you, his words resonated with me and have never left my consciousness. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Seeing none other, can you please call the roll?
Councilman McAvoy,
No.
Councilman Spadafino,
yes.
Councilwoman Sullivan,
Yes.
Council President Stanley.
Yes. Moving on to new business, can I get a motion for the following 16549? Awarding contracts for the purchase and installation of sound and lighting equipment at the Community Arts Center, Generation Electrical Company, $93,299, and Tadbit Energy Solutions Company for $41,250. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Councilman McAvoy, second. Councilman Spadafino. Any discussion? Seeing none. Ms. Perry, please call the roll.
Councilman McAvoy?
Yes.
Councilman Spadafino?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sullivan?
Yes.
Council President Stanley?
Yes. Moving on for the good of the cause, does anyone have anything tonight to report? Councilwoman Sullivan?
Yes. One thing is during recycling last Wednesday, they went by my house about 6:30 in the morning, but they also went up Stratford, which is close to there, and the neighbors were complaining. My husband usually brings out the recyclables around 6:15, 6:30, but he had jury duty that day, so he left a little later. And I was just wondering, are there because of everything and the overcrowdedness, are they supposed to be starting earlier now?
No, that situation was reported to the Carter, and they were warned to adjust their schedule to comply with the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I also would like to remind everyone, I have office hours tomorrow from 5:30 to 7:30. If you have any questions, problems, or concerns, I will be there. And like I say before, I can't answer every question right on the spot, but I will research it and get back to anyone who needs it. And it's right across from the clerk's office. Thank you.
Councilman?
Yes, if we may, Council President, I can direct these to Mr. Criscuolo.
Sure.
Regarding maybe some development updates. It looks as if in front of Kmart, we see a skeleton of a building, and there's some dumpsters. Can you
Yes,
just give us an
at this
update?
particular point in time, the new purchaser of that property has a permit to demo the front of the building and to do a new facade on the outside of the building. So he has his necessary permits for the demo and the construction of the new facade. They have approval to do 3 retail stores in the front, undetermined what those retail stores will be. The clothing center will be moving also to the front of the premise, which we're glad to see the clothing center, who was a thriving member of this community for many years, to be staying in that particular location. And there will be a self-storage facility in the rear. So the work that you see going on right at this particular point is for the facade.
I also noticed in front of the Brunswick Square, it was a leased, my memory serves me correctly, a leased sign, and maybe it says under contract, and then I saw somewhere, surely don't like to use Facebook as my reference point, but I saw something about a pad maybe going in the parking lot between Macy's and the Olive Garden. Is there anything that you have on that?
It certainly hasn't come to the planning board. As you know, I'm a sitting member of the planning board. I know they were talking about the possibility to find somebody to go there. They're not going to build something and hope somebody comes. I'm sure they're trying to market it and see if they can get somebody there. On a positive note, at the mall, they're in the process of installing electric car charging stations, Tesla charging stations. So if people do have electric cars, they'll be able to charge them there. And you will see that happening in several of the shopping centers along the highway, that they're coming in for permits to install electric car charging stations. So some of the construction you see in the parking lot was for that, sir.
And is there any truth to the rumor? I've done a little homework on this one. Truth to the rumor that on the corner of Lake and 18 South, I think it's Caldwell Bank, a Metro Diner going in there?
Yes, there was a change there. They have pulled their construction permits. Metro Diner is a U.S.-based company that's spread out across the country. I believe will be the first location in New Jersey. They are just a change of use there, so it didn't have to come to through the planning board. They take out their permits a while ago. I believe they got a slow start, but from what I hear, I've talked to the construction department, and they've actually had building, fire, and electrical inspections over the last 4 days. So they're moving like gangbusters, and it appears to be a spring or summer grand opening for that facility at that particular site. There is a website for that particular company where you can look at the menu, and it even states that particular site is coming soon, Route 18, East Brunswick, that particular site that you noted, Lake Avenue and Route 18.
And if you may indulge me, my homework taught me that the diner is a franchise. There are 14 states that have Metro diners in them. Began in 1938 in Jacksonville, Florida, and with the second-generation owners, they took on a more aggressive plan to expand and franchise the diner. A further anecdote is that they were featured on the food TV show Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, if that's a plus for them.
Councilman, which were they?
Say that again?
Which were they?
Which one of those?
I haven't seen the episode, so I'm going to look for them. Furthermore, they've numerous awards, and you can look on their website, metrodiner.com, and see the awards. Far too many to highlight here. And finally, there is a gluten-free menu that is also exhaustive and rather broad for the palate. So thank you for that update, Mr. Kiscola.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. I just want to announce that the East Brunswick Arts Commission is having a music night called Music Transcends on Sunday, March 10th. It's going to feature the acclaimed Arcadian Trio. All portion of the proceeds from each ticket is going to be sold will be donated to the Lost Souls Memorial Project. Tickets are $20, which you can get online at eastbrunswick.org. It's a long time coming, but if everyone wants to, enjoy a good night of music, it's on March 10th. Anyone else? Anything else for the pause? All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Councilwoman Sullivan, can I get a second? Everyone in favor?
Aye.